Welcome to a Healthy Life podcast from Baptist Health Systems.
I'm Terry McCarver. In today's podcast, we're actually going to join in with our dietitian, Lauren Magee, as she talks about small changes adding up. And I think in today's podcast, you're going to find that it's the little things that we do that make big results in the way that we eat and how we eat out, the way we cook. So join us for our seminar. Today we have Lauren Magee, and she's one of our dietitians, and she's going to be talking about small changes added up, and I'm excited to hear what she's going to say. And welcome.
Why worry about body weight? We're kind of talking about healthy eating, has to do with our weight. Some of the things that having excess body weight can contribute to is high blood pressure, diabetes, stroke, heart disease. There are even certain cancers that are linked with being overweight. But there is good news. If you are overweight, just losing 5 to 7% of your body weight can help you decrease your chances of getting some of those complications. So it does not have to be, you don't have to necessarily lose 50 pounds to see results. So just losing a little bit, 5, 10, 15 pounds will help out. And if you aren't overweight, changing your lifestyle, having a healthy diet, being physically active, that can increase your well-being, increase longevity. For successful weight management, there's 3 things that we're going to kind of talk about today. Healthy eating, lifestyle changes, physical activity. Those are kind of your 3 components. Basic rules of healthy eating. We're just going to go through some of these, and we're going to take some of these and talk about them a little bit more. Consume plenty of fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. When you think about your meals, you want to focus, you want to have some of these components at your meals, the whole grains, the vegetables, the fruits. And if you think about it, when you go to the grocery store, where you want to stay is the perimeter of the grocery store. If you think about it, what's located in that perimeter? You've got fruits and vegetables. You usually come to that first, the produce section. You've got breads, and you've got the different grains. You've got the milks, you've got the meats, you get the lean meats and fish. So you think about that's where your whole foods are kind of located. And you want to, of course you're going to go down the aisles, but you want to do the majority of your shopping at the perimeter. Dry beans and peas, those are great to add into your diet regularly. We'll talk about that in a second, what that does. Rely on the real foods, and this is again kind of talking about your real foods, less processed, less convenience foods and products. Include fish 2 times weekly. We'll kind of go over this a little bit more, but that's really, especially for our heart health, the fish, consuming that at least 2 times weekly is really beneficial. Low-fat dairy, 2 to 3 times a day is what they're really recommending. They're seeing some links with weight loss, weight management with the low-fat dairy. So we'll talk about that in a second. The calories that we consume from our liquids. A lot of times we'll get a lot of calories in through teas and Cokes and juices. So your calorie-free liquids is what you want to stick with. Also the foods with saturated fats and trans fats. We'll get into that in a second. Less sodium, the less salt, and that all goes back to consuming less processed, less convenience foods, because if we have high blood pressure, that's something that we want to watch. The fewer refined carbohydrates, like your white breads and things like that, you're not getting the benefit of the fiber. Alcohol, if you do drink, you want to do so in moderation. The alcohol is just providing you with empty calories. There's no nutrients there, so that's something you want to watch. And then portion control, and then slowing down, enjoying our food. So we'll kind of go into each one of those things a little bit more. The 3 major nutrient groups. We've got carbohydrates, protein, and fat. So we're going to take each one of those and kind of talk about it. Carbohydrates. A lot of people are afraid of carbs. They think, oh, carbs are bad. And that is not true. If we eat too many carbohydrates, it can lead to weight gain, but they are not bad in and of themselves. They provide us energy. That's our main energy producing food group, is the carbohydrates. Which ones do you choose? You want to choose your whole grain, your fiber rich carbohydrates. Fruits and vegetables, legumes, all your beans and peas are great sources of carbohydrate. They've got a lot of fiber in them. Fat-free skim milk. Milk products are carbohydrates. A lot of people don't realize that, but milk is a carbohydrate. Yogurt is a carbohydrate. It's got lactose. That's a form of carbohydrate. So those are the ones that you want to choose. Limit the foods that have your high sugar content. We all know what those are. Does not mean you can't ever have those foods, but you just want to limit them. You want to have them in moderation. The cakes and cookies and sodas, juices. Word about fiber. Fiber is a carbohydrate. A lot of people don't know that, but it is. It's a form of a carbohydrate, but it does not act like your typical carbohydrate because we cannot digest it. It's got non-digestible carbohydrates. It's usually a plant source, but it helps in reducing our cholesterol and it helps with blood sugar control. So if you have diabetes or high cholesterol, this is a big thing because it's going to help you lower those. You want to aim for at least 21 to 38 grams of fiber a day. Our typical American diet, we're only getting about 10, 15 grams. That's the typical American diet. So the recommendation for all these heart healthy benefits and the diabetes and the blood sugar control, we need to be getting 21 to 38 grams. That's listed on the food label. You can kind of check that. But just increasing some of those foods there at the bottom, the beans, the peas, fruits, even nuts have a good source of fiber. Whole grain breads, therefore, rather than maybe doing the white bread, you want to increase the wheat bread. Even cereals, a lot of your cereals now are fortified with fiber. You've got like the Kashi, the Fiber One. Have y'all ever tried those cereals? And they've even got bars now with more fiber. So there are easier ways to get it in. The proteins and meats, that's another one of our nutrient groups. For this, you want to choose the leanest that you can because typically our meats, they come from the animal source, so they're going to have a little bit more fat. So you do want to choose your leaner cuts if you're thinking beef. You do not have to totally cut beef out, but you do want to choose the lean cuts like the sirloin, the round, tenderloin, or flank steak. Those are some of your keywords for indicating that it's lean. If you do pork, again, the tenderloin is typically your leanest. If you do pork chops, you want to do the rib or loin. Canadian bacon, that's also a lean type of pork. Chicken and turkey, of course, is always lean. You want to take the skin off. The white meat is the best. So Thanksgiving's coming up. So for those turkeys, you want to choose the white meat more so than the dark. The darker is going to have a little bit more calories in it. And the fish, this is a big thing, especially you probably heard with omega-3 fatty acids. I'm sure y'all are aware. The fish oils, those are really good. They're indicating that might help with heart health or might decrease the chances of heart disease and things like that. So the salmon and tuna, those are your big sources, mackerel, trout, all those other types of fish. Those are going to be your richest sources of omega-3 fatty acids. So eat fish twice a week. That's why, because you want to get these heart healthy benefits. Also shellfish, oysters, those are naturally low in fat. So when you're choosing meats, you want to kind of think of some of these things. It's going to save you calories and it's going to help you with your health. Some cooking selection tips just to think about, of course, trimming that visible fat, any of that white part on the meat, that's what you want to trim off. And the cooking methods are big. Rather than frying the meats, which are going to get more oil soaked in, more fat, more calories, you want to bake and roast and grill. A lot of times grilling or broiling to let that fat drip down. That's a really good way to cook the meat. For ground beef, a lot of people kind of tend to get confused about the ground beef, but you want to look for the meats that show the lean to fat percentages. And so like if you choose a ground sirloin that's maybe 80% lean, that means you're still getting 20% fat. So the best one to get is really the 90% lean. It's probably your best bet. Also, just to let you know that the way they grade meat, the select is the leanest. Choice is going to be the next to the lean, but it's still got a little bit moderate fat. Now the prime graded is going to be your fattiest cut. Prime rib, for example, is fattier than your sirloin or select grades. You can also ask your butcher or the grocery store, they will trim the meats for you. So if you pick out a cut of meat and you want it trimmed, you can ask them to trim it for you. Speaking of fats, it's a valuable energy source. We do need some fat. We cannot cut it all out. Going strictly no fat is really not the way to go. You do need it for your hair, your skin. The vitamins that we get are transported by the fat. It packs more calories per gram than carbohydrate or protein, so that's why you have to be a little bit careful with the fat because we can get more calories. But it's divided into 3 groups: the saturated, which is the worst, and you have the unsaturated, which we'll go into. Those are the best. And then we have, of course, trans fats, which we'll talk about. So what's the difference, especially with the fats and the oils? You have the oils that contain the monounsaturated or your polyunsaturated fats. Those are your good fats. They're oils, they're liquid at room temperature. They typically come from plant sources. They're fish. So any fat that comes from your plant source is going to be better for your heart. Doesn't mean that it's less calories. A lot of people think, well, I'll just eat all the monounsaturated fat that I want, but you're still going to get calories. And so you can't just use all the olive oil that you want or all the canola oil. It's still going to provide calories, which can lead to weight gain. But speaking about your heart, it's going to be the better fat to choose. Even nuts, olives, avocados, things like that, those are good types of fats. Then you've got the saturated, and we've all heard about the saturated fats. Those are fats that are solid at room temperature. I always remember this with the S. Saturated is solid. If you think about if you or to boil a chicken, reserve that broth. If you put it in the refrigerator overnight, the next morning, that layer of fat that hardens up, that's the saturated fat. If you think about it, that's kind of what it's doing in our arteries. That's why you want to get less of that. The more saturated fat you take in, the more artery clogging plaque that can build up. Often your saturated fats are associated with the animal foods. Animal fats contain the saturated. Those tend to raise your blood cholesterol levels. The mono unsaturated tend to lower the cholesterol levels. You want to eat the least amount of saturated fats that you can. Less than 7% of your total calories should come from the saturated fat. So you want to therefore cook with the oils, canola, olive, peanut oil, more so than the butter or bacon, things like that. And then when selecting a solid fat, sometimes there's some cases where you have to have a solid fat. The oil is not going to work appropriately for your recipe, so you want to look for the softer tub margarines that are trans fat free, which leads us to the next topic, is the trans fat. These have kind of gotten a lot of attention in the last few years. When they were discovered that these saturated fats were bad for us, they attempted to make a product, the food industry attempted to make a product that would be better for us. They were like, well, if these liquid oils are better, let's make those into a solid fat, and those will still be healthy. But what they actually created is something called trans fats. Again, it's taking liquid oils and changing them into a solid. It's not really good. They tend to raise cholesterol levels just as much as saturated fats. Now they have mandated that they have to put the amount of trans fats, like on your food label, they'll list the amount of trans fats in that food. Have y'all seen that? You'll start noticing that. What trans fats do, they improve the shelf life and stability of your processed food. So a lot of your crackers and snack foods are going to have trans fats. A lot of times they're hidden in there. It's not just margarine that has the trans fats. So they're mainly found in those types of foods, commercial baked products, cakes, cookies, a lot of those things. They're trying to make the products now where they're taking those out. So look at the label for those trans fats. The less, the better.